It's 8 o'clock.
Here we go. Good morning from St. Petersburg, Florida. All is well. Wednesday, September 3rd, 8:01 a.m. And all is well. Well, it's okay for a lot of us, and for some of us it's not okay. So let's check the weather, and then we'll get around to other stuff. Seattle, Washington, 58 degrees. Portland, Oregon, 57 degrees. Hayward, California, 65 degrees. Tokyo, Japan, 73 degrees. San Antonio, Texas, 77 degrees. Toledo, Ohio, 60 degrees. Los Angeles, California, 70 degrees. Denver, Colorado, 63 degrees. St. Petersburg, Florida, 80 degrees. Corpus Christi, Texas, 78 degrees. San Francisco, California, 61 degrees. Tampa Bay, Florida, 78 degrees. Charlotte, North Carolina, 73 degrees. New York, New York, 72 degrees. Santa Fe, New Mexico, 62 degrees. Santa Rosa, California, 56 degrees. Gaza, 86 degrees. Tel Aviv, 86 degrees. Jerusalem, 86 degrees. Hilo, Hawaii, 72 degrees. Rotterdam, Netherlands, 70 degrees. Amsterdam, Netherlands, 70 degrees. And that's the weather from around the world. Let's see what else we got going on here in our wild country. Let's go ahead and do some shifting here. See if we can get some of this stuff shifted around. Alright, let's go here. And there we go. So, let's check out the chats this morning. See who's chatting it up. We've got Global Revolution, 18 viewers. And not too much going on in Global Revolution. Let's check out Dissenters, 4 viewers. Dissenters 5, 2 viewers. Artstarzz.com, no viewers. And we've got Gone with 8 viewers. And OPN has 4 viewers. Syrian Freedom, 2 viewers. And not too much chatting going on in the site chat this morning. Occupy Toronto, nothing going on in Occupy Toronto. 32 tweets, 8 likes on this page, 437 unique visitors, and 904 page views this morning on our artstarzz.com, chatboxing live stream. I asked a little bit about how Occupy TV is doing, and we did have one reply, said that it's a good thing. I don't watch it too much. I have it there in case somebody else wants to watch it. I also use it as a monitor when there's something live happening. Hopefully Occupy TV will pick it up. I haven't noticed too much if they have, because usually what I do is I go directly to the streamer and I do it that way. But it's a way to monitor what's going on in the Occupy world. So let's see what we got going on. We have a live streamer that may not be live streaming too much. Let's go ahead and bring in, this is a live streamer from Dissenters, and this live streamer also has had their own channel, but has run across financial hard times. It happens. There's a lot of people out there that they're living on the edge, and all it takes is just the smallest thing, and they can go down. And for a lot of people, the fall isn't that far when you live on the edge like that. So we have a streamer, Treeburrows. You've heard me talk about him having his own channel and having some differences with Treeburrows when it came to voting. Treeburrows has a different view of voting. He feels that voting, it doesn't work. But, not to poke him in the side or anything. This is just something that I say. I say it about Ferguson, and I say it a lot. How important voting is. And voting isn't just about electing politicians. You can change policy by voting. If you vote in the right politicians, and not to say that when they get there they're going to do the right thing all the time, because that's not always the case. That's not always true. That when you vote a politician in, that politician is going to do what you voted him or her in there to do. And in the case of Treeburrows, I think that one of the safety nets, and one of the reasons I always vote Democrats, is because the Democrats they do the best they can to try to provide safety nets for people like Treeburrows. And when you've run out of family and friends, which a lot of times, it doesn't take that long, because as soon as you're in trouble, you find out that you don't have very many friends, and that your family isn't all that eager to help you for very long. So you start slipping down that road, and then the first thing you hear is you should have done this and you should have done that when you're reaching out for help. And then you've got your pride to deal with. You don't want to ask for help. You're an independent person. Most of us are. And when we start to slip and slide into dependency, because that's what happens when you start losing, where you live. You become dependent on other people. And then you want to talk about slavery, like the way they do in Global Revolution, the way Rise PDX and Brinbu and Lady Zaga and Fuzzit and Annie Sings and all of the people in Global Revolution that talk about slavery, working makes you a slave. Well, these are your options. This is what happens when you can't find a job. Is that then you don't have any money. And when you don't have any money, you become homeless. So, you know, that's your option. Being a slave or being homeless. I remember a few years back, um, I was watching a documentary on slavery in America. And I'm not talking about the kind of slavery that they talk about in global revolution. I'm talking about back in the days when we had slaves in America. And they found a letter or a note, apparently from one of the African slaves that could write, because there was a time that they really didn't want you to write. They didn't want you to read. They didn't want you to write. You were a slave. You were property. It was easier to control an uneducated person than it was to control an educated person. So they didn't want you reading and writing right off the bat. At least not most slave owners didn't want you to do that. But they found a note from a slave. And that slave said, okay, now I'm free. This was after they freed the slaves. But I'm free to starve. I'm free to be homeless. I'm free to die now. That's what freedom has brought me. That's what I'm free to do. Because when you're black in America in those days, you were supposed to be a slave. It wasn't like some black people were slaves and some black people were not slaves. They were all slaves. So it wasn't like you were going to go to some white owner who used to own slaves, now can't own slaves, and ask for a job and demand a fair wage. Now you're in competition for the jobs. White people had the jobs. Poor white people had the jobs. Not all white people were slave owners. Not all white people were property owners. So you had a problem. Right off the bat, you had a problem. Now you're free. You still can't vote, but you're free. You're free to starve. You're free to lose your home. Now I imagine you're free to pay taxes too. You're a free man. That's what you are. So when they talk about slavery in global revolution, they don't know what they're talking about. It's just something they like to throw around to get people to revolt. Unfortunately, it's only going to be a small amount of people that are even going to listen to this stuff. And you might find some 16-year-old kid barely making their way through the world, haven't even had a chance to do anything, listen to this baloney. And because, their life is all upside down, they're going to say, yeah, that's great. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to work for anybody and be a slave. Well, guess what you're free to do? You're free to starve. You're free to never own anything in your life. You're free never to build anything for yourself because you're going to get old unless you plan on dying at 17. Your parents are only going to let you live in the basement for so long. And that's who the people in GR appeal to. Youngsters. Now, I seen a guy in there yesterday claim to be 53. 53 years old. And he thought that this revolution was a good thing. Well, one or two things was happening there. Okay, one or two things. Either this person was not 53, or this person has lived a very sheltered life at 53. The revolution in global revolution is about anarchy. And you'll be free to starve. You'll be debt free, which means you'll never have nothing. You'll never own property. You'll not have an education. That's what'll happen to you if you don't want to be a slave, the kind of person that they call a slave. So getting back to tree burros. Tree burros, I like tree burros. I call him Trev. I never could say his name right, and then rather to, not continue to slaughter it, I just call him Trev. And we have our differences. But, I don't want to see anybody go homeless. Now, he was talking about this in the chats yesterday, so I'm not talking out of school. I'm talking about somebody who was talking about this in the chats, and basically that's public information now. He wasn't in there really asking for anything. He was just talking to people he considers his online friends and reporting to them that, hey, he was going to be missing in action for a while because his life got worse. He wasn't going to be able to afford the internet anymore. He wasn't going to be able to stream anymore. And he had hoped to get a motorhome. He sold all his belongings. He had been selling his belongings for a while. I remember seeing him in dissenters talking about selling stuff like his grand piano and some of his other things, trying to get along. That's what you do in hard times. You try to get along. You start liquidating your property. And that is why it's so important when you're up or to try to get up to acquire some sort of property. It's insurance. It's an insurance policy. When you own property of any kind, whether it be a grand piano, a car, a house, or something, when you own things like that, at least when times get hard, you have something to liquidate so that you can get something to eat. Because for some people, it gets that bad. It gets that bad that they don't even have no food. And when you run out of friends and family, you turn to strangers. You're free to turn to strangers for help. Some people don't go that far. Some people drink themselves to death or start committing crimes because prison is better than living on the streets. So they commit crimes and go to jail. When I lived in Denver, there was a lot of homeless people in Denver. I used to go down and visit them. I had a little catering truck. And when you don't sell all the food on the catering truck, you got to do something with it. I had known these homeless people that lived down in a junkyard for quite a few years. They moved into the neighborhood that I lived in. The junkyard was about a mile away, but I used to play as a kid down in that area. There was all train tracks and stuff down in there and old buildings that as kids we used to go play in down there. And so, when I went down in there, as I became an adult, I used to own dump trucks. And a lot of times, I needed help. All the people I knew had good jobs. They were working. They couldn't come and work for me. So I needed help. I needed labor. So I would go down there and I would hire them. And I was paying $10 an hour back then, because you could do a little something with $10 an hour. If you made $80 or $100 a day working for me, you could do something with it. If you didn't have any bills, especially, $100 would last you a long time. $100 could last you a month. So when the economy got bad and I sold my dump trucks and I bought a catering truck. And when I had extra food, instead of throwing it away, I would take it down to these guys that all lived in this junkyard. After a while, it became a community. And that's the way it goes, is because the word goes out, that this is a safe place to rest your head at night. And then it became a whole community. I mean, a lot of them, like 40 or 50 of them, started coming down in there, and there was an empty field across the street, and some would dig little tunnels, and they would live in them, just like a bear. That's what they would do. And a lot of them had mental problems, and some of them just were antisocial. They would rather dig a hole in the dirt than live with people. They hated people so much that that's what they would do. They were homeless. They were free. They were free to live the way they wanted to live. This is what Global Revolution recommends. They recommend that you become free of the system, free to starve, free to dig a hole and live in it, free to be the way you want to be. That's what they recommend. But most cases where people end up homeless is not a choice. They're, for lack of better words, victims of circumstance. Maybe they don't feel like a victim. It doesn't matter what they feel like at this point in their life. It doesn't matter what you call them anymore at this point in their life. They just want to survive. That's all they want to do. They just want to survive. And when it gets to the point where you wake up in the morning and you're sleeping on the streets, or you've found you a nice little squat somewhere under a bridge, and now you're calling a box a home, or the back seat of your car a home. When you've gotten to that point in your life and you wake up in the morning, you wonder, where is your next meal going to come from? Or you've managed to find a restaurant, for example, that throws its food out, or you find somebody like me that brings food to you. Well, it turns out that I wasn't the only one taking these people food down there. And it also turns out that a lot of the food we were bringing them was rotting, because now they couldn't eat it. Because people got wind of it and they started to take people food. Nobody likes to give away cash. It's really hard to get cash, but you can get stuff. Jackets and shoes and socks and some of the basics that you need: toothpaste and toothbrushes and combs and brushes and shampoo and soap. And people will give you that kind of stuff, but they won't give you cash. Because homeless people have gotten a reputation for taking the cash and using it, maybe to get high, buy booze. And people who would give cash are offended by that. But if you think about it, once you give the cash, you gave it away. It's no longer any of your business what they do with it. It's only your business if you want to give or not give. You can't give somebody something and then attach some conditions to it. A lot of people do that. They give you something, or they help you, and then there's conditions to it. So Treb has fallen on hard times. And like I said, from everything I've seen, he wasn't asking for anything. He was trying to liquidate, and he was trying to hold on to some pride, and he was trying to liquidate. So now he's free, according to Global Revolution, because he doesn't have a job. When you don't have a job, you don't have any money. When you don't have any money, you don't have any place to live either. And that's what Global Revolution recommends. They recommend that you stop working. And like I said, I seen them the other day recommend that you don't go to school. If you tear down the government and you tear down these corporations, of course it's not going to happen, because the majority, way past the majority of the people, have no intentions of following the lead of somebody who tells them not to work or go to school. They'll just look at you like you lost your mind. Or you go ahead and live that way, and we'll see how that works out for you. You be an example. You be an example. Show us how to do it. Don't tell us. There's plenty of people that'll tell you what to do, but rarely will they show you how to do it and be an example. It's always poor people telling other poor people about rich people. Rich people are this, and rich people are that. Poor people telling other poor people about rich people. Be an example. Become rich. And then tell us how to do it. But then again, no, you'd be a slave. You'd be a slave. Hopefully, Tribos is going to be able to communicate with dissenters. That's basically his home base. And also, the people that emotionally will support him. And there might be some that'll kick out a couple of bucks every now and then to him. But at this point, the money that would be contributed to Tribos would be eventually to feed him, because it can go that way. It can become that way, that he is down to the point where if he gets $1, it's to eat. You can still starve to death in America if your pride gets too much in your way. You can still starve to death. You can freeze to death in America if pride gets too much in your way. If you think that you are safer sleeping outside than you are sleeping in a shelter, whether it's because you know that it's safer outside than a shelter, or because of your pride, you'd rather sleep outside than in a shelter. There's people like that get stuck like that with their pride. They won't work at McDonald's because of their pride. That's a reality. The Bible, if you're a Bible thumper, will tell you about pride. Pride is a sin. But just logically, it's a bad move. It's a bad move. If your pride is keeping you hungry, and your pride is keeping you away from getting any kind of shelter, so that you can live for another day, bad luck doesn't mean that it's the end of the road. Falling on hard times does not mean it's the end of the road. It might feel like it. And as your diet changes and you don't eat properly, your mental strength deteriorates right along with your body. to where you don't have the strength anymore to face people to get that job. You don't have that mental strength anymore. So your body starts to fail, and your mind does the same. It falls right in step with it. So the only ones that after a while is left to help you is the government. And that's why voting is so important. Just another reason why voting is so important. Because when you fall through all of the cracks, family and friends, and even strangers, when you fall through all of them, you still have a good chance that you can turn to the government for help. At least something to eat. Now, if you're a young, strong man, now the government, you're going to play getting help from the government until you've sunk to the level that they require you to sink to. Now, some people may complain about that, but they'd be the same people that want you to be a slave. Oh, the government don't help you. The government doesn't help anybody. Well, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. They're worried about who won't help you, but if you ask them for help, oh well, I can't. I'm barely making it myself. Well, people can't eat advice. And like I said, as soon as somebody falls on hard times, it's really quick for people to start saying, well, you knew this was coming. You should have done this, and you should have done that. So this is all your fault. People are quick to tell you that. You're on hard times as it is. Now you got to listen to some asshole tell you how it's all your fault. And it may very well be your fault. But it's just not something you want to hear when you're all you do is you see their mouth moving and when you were up and proud and roaming around in the world all strutting your stuff and everything. I don't eat McDonald's. I don't eat Burger King. And now you finding yourself at night waiting for them hamburgers that McDonald's and Burger King throws out. Pizza Hut. Donuts. You find yourself doing that because now it's not about health anymore. You don't give a shit if it's healthy or not. You just want that hunger to go away. And there are people in America that go down that road that are that hungry in America. Some of it is pride. It may start out as pride. They don't want to take any help from anybody. I'm not going to go ask anybody for shit. Then you go 2 or 3 days, without eating because your money is going to run out. If you don't have a source of guaranteed income, of course, if you had a source of guaranteed income, then you wouldn't be out on the streets in the first place. But if you're just, you're just almost there, in your 50s, mid-50s, even in mid-50s, you've got 7 years. You've got 7 years. And that is if you worked. If you didn't listen to some knucklehead like Rise PDX, and you worked at least 15 or 20 years out of your life. Out of them 50-something years, you worked 15 or 20 of them. So now you hit 62, and at least you've got something. A little something. You can get food stamps, and you can get, possibly Medicaid for your health problems. And you can get a little check from Social Security. Safety net. The government did that. The people of the United States did that for the people who just couldn't quite make it. But if you can live to 62, the government, the people, will help you. But, If you're 55, for example, 7 years is a long way off. 7 years of being homeless, living in your car, if you can last 7 years. You know, because a car takes gas and maintenance, and you just can't park anywhere and set up your house. That's just not going to, it doesn't work that way. So you've got to take your car and you got to go hide somewhere and park somewhere where it's legal to park there overnight. A lot of places in the city especially, you can't park overnight. So if you take your car and you drive out of the city, for example, to a place where you can park, because you can't go to rest stops on the highway and stay there very long because they're patrolled. Cops patrol them. You can't do that. They'll see that your car is there every night and they'll say, no, you can't do this. And there's a reason for that. Because if you could, then pretty soon they aren't rest stops anymore. People will go set up residence in these places because there's bathrooms and water and electricity and things like that. So there's reasons for that. Of course, some would say, well, you know, so what if they do that? Well, yeah, so what? It's easy for you to say. If that's the case, can they come and pitch a tent in your front yard? Not just one, but maybe 50. Can 50 people come and set up a tent on your front yard? You wouldn't like it. And it's a lot easier to give away somebody else's space than it is your own. And that's what they preach in Global Revolution. They talk about sharing. A lot of people talk about sharing in these chats. What we all got to do is get together and share. Really? And then you ask them, all right, we're all going to share. What do you got to throw into the pot? Well, I ain't got nothing. Well, then it ain't sharing. The people who have something are giving it to the people who don't have anything, and the people who don't have anything are the ones that are pushing sharing. Let's all share. And then they want equal rights. They want equal rights without doing things equally. That's what they promote in Global Revolution. That's some of the things that they want to do. They don't want you to vote. They don't want you to eat GMOs. They don't want you to work, and they don't want you to go to school. So now you're free. You're no longer a slave. You've taken the advice of the geniuses over in Global Revolution, and now there's nothing to eat. There's no electricity. There's no clean water. There's no roads to drive on. Nobody's building cars anymore. Planes. No airplanes. Nobody's making clothes anymore because everybody's doing everything themselves. That's the plan of Global Revolution. That's the revolution they're talking about. That's what anarchy is. No rule of law. Fend for yourself. Defend yourself. Get yourself a gun. It's your right to own a gun. You know, it's funny how they want to follow certain rules, but other rules they don't want to follow. It's your right to own a gun. It's your right to defend yourself. And now it's your right to starve. That's one of the things that happen when you really, really, really start exercising your freedom. It's like free speech. You're free to say anything you want, but somebody's liable to punch you in the mouth. Yeah, you can send them to jail for assaulting you. It's against the law to punch somebody in the mouth. Just because they said something, there's free speech. Your mouth is still going to hurt. They may even break your jaw, which now is going to hurt for the rest of your life. Because you had free speech. You decided you wanted to say what you wanted to say. And in this country, you're free to do what you want to do, as long as you don't hurt anybody else. So if you don't want to work, you're free to do that. What you're not free to do is live in the parks. What you're not free to do is live in the rest areas. What you're not free to do is live in your car in front of my house. You're not free to do that. You're not free to do that in front of anybody's house. It's a structured society that we live in, and there's rules. We call them laws, ordinances, structure. You've got to have it. Without it, it's anarchy. And that's what global revolution preaches. Anarchy. So Treb is down on his luck. And yesterday I heard that, yesterday was going to be his last day on the internet because of financial difficulties. It doesn't make too much sense to not have anything to eat but have the internet. A lot of people think that poor people shouldn't have a lot of things if they're poor. You hear the Republicans saying it all the time, especially during election time. They'll say, oh, those welfare mothers have big screen TVs and cell phones and drive Cadillacs. They live better than you do and they're on welfare. If you listen to Rush Limbaugh, he'll say stuff like that. He'll tell you how well the poor is doing. Rush ain't seen a poor person other than on TV. You can't have all the money that Rush has and be bumping into poor people. What kind of circles are you walking in there, Rush, that you know poor people? As a matter of fact, it looks like Rush doesn't walk anywhere. He's worth a lot of millions. He's worth a lot of millions. And, I would guess that Rush has a driver and a maid. A lot of things. Hires a lot of people. Maybe they tell him. They tell him what it's like to be poor. And then now he knows. He knows that, there's poor people out there. Because they work for him. And he probably doesn't want to pay them a fair wage. He fights against fair wage. A minimum wage. Nobody wants a minimum wage. People want a fair wage. When people work, they want to be paid. So, if we had a mandatory minimum of $15 an hour, it wouldn't matter where Treb went to work. He could make a decent wage. And he wouldn't have to be homeless. But then again, just because there's a fair wage out there, well, there'll be work out there. There's not even work out there now when there's no fair wage. That's what, a lot of people are saying. I'm long past the working age. But, that's what people are saying. There's no jobs. Don't tell me to get a job. There is no jobs. That's what they say. That's what they're saying. I see it on TV all the time because, there's two realities. There's the reality that I'm looking out my window and I don't see anybody walking around homeless out there. I don't see anybody doing that, but that doesn't mean they're not there. I have to see them on TV. That's a lot of times where we get our information. MSM, mainstream media. So, hopefully Treb keeps in touch, and hopefully he'll be able to live stream what it's like being homeless in America. And somebody will pick that up, and maybe he can make an income out of doing that. He did buy an expensive camera before, nobody expects this to happen to you. You're trying everything you can to make something work. When there's a lot of young people out of work, as you get older, you're not exactly in demand. An older male in his 50s, that's your choice. Can I hire this older guy in his 50s, Or should I hire this younger guy in his 20s or in his late teens? Who will do the best for my company or my business? Is this older guy with all of his preconceived notions of how my business should be run? This older guy is going to come in, who I hired to work for me, is going to come in and tell me how to run my business? Or should I hire some kid that doesn't have any opinions yet and is going to do the same job and not give me so much shit? Just going to come in and work. I'll train him how to think and how to do the things that I need him to do in my company. And that's a problem. People who hire people know this because they're like that. They know that they are going to have an opinion. A lot of times, older people are going to have an opinion. And when you're at 50, you're really opinionated. Because you're right there. You're between young and old. 40, 50, you're right between young and old. And if you have to take a job that a teenager might want, you're not going to be a happy older person, because now you know that there isn't very much of a future. You're not going to ever be able to buy a house. You're not going to be able to buy a new car. You're not going to be able to do the things that most Americans would like to do. You're not going to have that opportunity anymore. So if you're young, then what you have to do is start thinking about the day when you're going to be old, because that's what's going to happen. Plan for old age. Look at the older people around you. See what they did and how they did it, and see if that's a possibility for you. Just because you might know that if you do this and you do that, that doesn't mean you still can. If there aren't any good jobs, it's hard to buy a house, for example. The prices of houses haven't gone down like people think. They are still inching up. They inch up. You know? You can't hardly buy anything worth living in for less than $100,000. Now, can you imagine only making $7.25 or what it is an hour, and then have dreams of buying the cheapest house? Say you can find one for $50,000 or $30,000 if you can. You still can, but boy, they're gonna need a lot of work. And you're now working for $7 something an hour. You can't just work 40 hours a week on that job. You might have to work 8 hours on that one and then go work 4 or 5 hours on another one. So you're not going to have time to do all of that and now fix this new house that you bought for $30 or $40,000. You're going to run out of energy. So dreaming these days aren't as easy as they used to be, but that was never an easy dream anyway. To buy property and own property has always been a good idea. But after you're doing it for a while, making a payment on a house for 5 or 10 years, you do feel like a slave. And then you look, you've got 5 years paid into this house. Now you've got 25 more years to go. And you look at it and you say, this is bullshit, man. Especially when something goes wrong. You got to put a roof on. Oh, shit, now I got to put a roof on. Heater, your furnace goes out. Oh, shit, now I've got to buy a furnace. Air conditioning goes out. Oh, shit, I got to fix the air conditioner. Grass gets long. You got to cut the grass. All of these things you have to do. Well, let me tell you, when you're old, you'll be damn glad you did it. Because the guarantee out of all of that is you're going to get old. You're going to get old. And if you don't take care of business when you're young, your opportunities for happiness are limited when you get old. So when somebody tells you that you're a slave, paying taxes, you're a slave, buying a house, you're a slave, getting an education, you're a slave, you have to understand the price of freedom. And like the person who really was a slave said, now he's free to starve. You're free to starve. You're free to live outdoors in the cold and in the rain or in the heat. You're free to do that. That's what your freedom is getting you when you look at working for a living as being a slave. There's a lot of people out there who are very free and they can live with it. They just don't live very long. But then again, maybe they didn't want to. Maybe they decided that I'm going to live the way I want to live, and the way I want to live, I'm not going to live very long. Living out on the streets, you don't live very long. You don't see anybody 100 years old living out on the streets. And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to live to be 100 anyway. Well, when you're 70 years old or so, and you really start slowing down, life, the basics of life, is what you start looking at. You're not that eager to say, I don't want to live another day. When you're young, it's different because you're ignorant. You're ignorant of life and what you actually have. You're ignorant. And a lot of people waste their life. And then they get in a pinch and they start looking around and they go into the oh shit mode. Everything you take for granted, everything, including getting up in the middle of the night, flipping on a switch, walking to the bathroom and using the bathroom. You take it for granted. And then you wake up in your car and you want to get warm. You're sleeping in the back seat now. You don't get up, flip on a switch, and go use the bathroom. You use the bathroom more than likely right outside your car. And then you walk around and turn the ignition on if you've got gas to do that, to stay warm. Entertainment, turn the radio on, read a book. A lot of people read books when they're homeless. And they make it look like it's a choice. Oh, I love to read. Well, yeah, that's all there is to do. That's why so many people in prison find God. Because that's all there is to do. So good luck to Treb. And, I wish him well. I don't have any advice for him because that isn't what he needs. He already knows what he's doing. Unfortunately, it's not working for him at this time. So then there is XTW 317, who last I heard has cancer and is not doing too well either. I vaguely remember the screen name XTW 317, but again in dissenters, I heard that he or she has cancer, and that's how well that I actually know him. I'm not even sure if it's a he or a she. I don't know. And I wish them well. Yesterday I got an email address, so I will be writing to them and wishing them well. But a lot of times people know me and I don't know them. So I hope XTW. I understand that they're getting chemo. Again, I'm getting all of this from the chats. I don't know how true it is, but XTW is sick, and hopefully XTW will get better and the chemo will work if this is what's going on. But I do have his or her email address, and I will be writing them and wishing them well. So if you wanted to get a hold of XTW 317, then you can probably go into dissenters and ask, and somebody might be able to get you that email. That's how I got it, and I don't know how XTW would feel about having their email published. So I won't be doing that until I talk to XTW. And again, like I said, I heard it through the grapevines. I'm not much of a crusader on these sort of things. I'll talk about them, and then it's over for me. I move on. So I'm about out of time here. And again, good luck to Treb. I did tell Treb that if he wanted to use my channel, he could, because Wi-Fi is still free to Treb if he has an account. And if he doesn't have an account, I have an account, and I'll help him, do that sort of thing. But I'm not much for giving out money, advice. Not even advice. I just say what I think. I talk about it, and that's it. I'm really not giving anybody any advice. I'm just talking about it because it's a subject that interests me. What happens to somebody who goes down like that? Well, I know, but a lot of people don't. I've never been in that situation. I did travel a little bit in California where I had to hitchhike and sleep under a bridge and stuff like that. But that's like being rich and pretending you're poor. There's a big difference between doing a little hitchhiking and being homeless for real. When everybody has turned their back on you. Everybody. There's a big difference. So I'm Artstarzz. That's just my opinion. And it is Wednesday, September 3rd, and it is 8:57 a.m. here in St. Petersburg. Some might think that if you're homeless, to head to a sunny state. There's a lot of problems with being homeless here in the sunny state. Number one, you're not as welcome as you would think. And number two, the elements are a little bit different because of the sun and everything. That's hard on you. And the bugs. You'll go to lay down and there's bugs and snakes and stuff here in Florida that the homeless people have to take into consideration. But like I said, good luck to Treb. I'm Artstarzz. Have a good day.